Welcome. My name is Jerry Capizzuto from godislovetruthlife.com or godislovetruthfreedom.com because a life without freedom is not a life worth living. And today I have my amazing How to Become the True Media course fellow student, Kevin Kelso. Welcome.
Hey, well, thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so
Thank you, Debbie.
my pleasure. Tell me a little bit about how you discovered Mark Passio's work, natural law, etc.
Let's see. I probably many years ago through, I guess the best way to describe it is through algorithms, maybe, because that's how I seem to come across people. Because I was listening to Michael Desarian, and then from Michael Desarian, I discovered Jordan Maxwell, and then from Jordan Maxwell, I discovered Michael Desarian. I mean, excuse me. Then from Jordan Maxwell, I discovered Mark Passio.
Awesome, cool. And like for me, it was sort of a research-based experience as well. Like
Mm-hmm.
I I've told this story before, but I'll say it again because it's, just a
Mm-hmm.
story. But yeah, like when I was 8, my priest tried to molest me and I um escaped
Mm-hmm.
and tried to tell my parents and they like didn't believe me. And so as an adult,
Mm-hmm.
I really take the sort of testimonies of survivors of satanic
Mm-hmm.
ritual abuse seriously,
Mm-hmm.
and the implications of what they share about, not just like the how the dark occultist social engineers work, but just
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, just the horrific things they experience too. So anyway,
Mm-hmm.
well, I was doing my SRA research and I came across Jay Parker's podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and Mark Passio was a guest on there. And so the rest
Mm-hmm.
is I started with episode 1 and kept going.
Wow. So, so how long ago did you discover Mark Passio? How many years ago?
So I think I discovered him in 2022.
2022. I
Yeah.
discovered him back in golly, it was a long time ago. Like, I didn't stay with him because I found so many other people. Like I said, I was interested in Jordan Maxwell. Partly, I was intrigued. I only discovered later on that he happened to be in a cult that I was in, so I think that came later. But I was just kind of skittish about just going with one person because of having been in a cult that I got out of. But I didn't ever think that Mark Passio was a cult. I just thought it required a whole different revamping of the way I thought, and I wasn't prepared to go that far. After I followed his work for about a year and a half, and but the idea that of no government was a big step for me because but 4 years before I met him, I was very much because I used to be a social worker, and social workers are almost joined at the hip. It seems like with the Democratic Party. I mean, not all social workers, but they tend to be very the whole funding of social programs and everything. And like 4 years before him, I was knocking on doors trying to get people to vote for Obama. And then the idea that no government, I thought, gee, but anyway, but yeah, like around 87, 1986, I got out of a cult that was difficult to get out of, and so then I was about a year later. I did academia for 7 years, and I got 2 degrees through there. And then it was hard though, staying in school because the school never came easy to me. But anyway, And so recently I got interested in Mark Passio's work again because I just found such incredible, just incredible mind control going on in the media that, like, always knew it was bad, but I just never realized how bad it was when, I mean, like with the COVID psyop. I mean, that was just unreal. I did never thought how I saw the whole thing when it started that it was a psyop, but
Yeah.
how seriously it was taken by so many people because they hadn't had the, I guess the best way to say it is they hadn't had the advantage of I did, to have looked into a lot of different things that you and I discuss. I don't want to keep rambling, but it was
You're doing awesome.
it's just amazing how they hoodwinked the medical people because they go to school so long. I mean, I always knew that they were Rockefeller medicine was, I mean, you go to school so long. I'd been in academia. I know what happens there. You got a big student loan and you're invested in a stream of thinking, but still, I thought there would have been, I mean, there were a few doctors that came out, but it was just, it really felt like I know what it was. I felt like I was in a cult. The whole world is a cult. And,
Correct.
that was the weird thing. I always suspected the whole world was a cult, but then I realized it really is.
Yeah.
And that flew me for, you know, I thought I was really getting interested right before the COVID psyop. I had spent a lot of time with Deborah Tavares and StopTheCrime.net. Not so much with her, I should say, as an audience is more what I mean, and learning about, um, and also a cohort of hers, which would be the woman who wrote the book, The Green Mask of Agenda 21. Um, her name is what's her name? I have to look it on Amazon. She passed back in 2021, I believe. She had died of lung cancer. But I was learning about um, the intricacies of Agenda 21, and then there was the big fires out in California, like the Paradise fires and the
Right.
directed energy weapons, and to
Correct.
me it was cultish right there. But then I'm really delving deep into the book by um, Corey. Was it Corey? I just got her name on the tip of my tongue. Corey. Um, Rosa Corey. That's it. Rosa Corey. She wrote the book The Green Mask of Agenda 21. And I'm really doing a second reading. It's not that bad of a book. It's kind of like, that book by, well, anyway, it's like 185 pages. It's not too bad of a read. Um, and I was delving into Iron Mountain. And I'm thinking this place is kind of like a cult, this whole world. I mean, with the fires and Paradise, the directed energy weapons causing the fires and the reasons for that, trying to make a railroad from China over here were thoughts and other things going on. And then this big psyop of COVID started. And that
Right.
just really, I could just feel it like a brick wall coming my way. How it just had a very like a unmovable backing to it. How they just knocked people off who had already had huge amounts of mounting evidence, and they just skirted it by like it was a railroad train coming, and anything in the way was just gonna not be enough for them to even stop.
What
So
sickens me is that that's just the beginning. That was the tip of the iceberg, Like it's just going to get worse.
yeah, and we thought that. I had a friend of mine who I was locally here. He passed away in 2020. let's see, back in 2017, 2016, and he had said it was going to get worse. We both knew it, but we didn't realize how slow it would be. And Mark Passio says that's the nature of when the violation of not natural law. It's a very gradual process. How it comes, it kind of envelops a whole people. You know, it's all over being over involved in the left side of the brain causes
Yes.
this like dog chasing its own tail kind of thing, you know. um I always like, now I remember a long time ago, I mean, I listened to a lot of Passio stuff, but I kept thinking I'll find other people like him. I just remember getting in a cult, and I thought I don't want to just hold on to one person's point of view. But he was just not to say his point of view. It's just that his was so unique that I was I wasn't able to get it to integrate as well with my other knowledge base in the community, like in the
Mm,
so-called truther community. You
right.
know, like with um, things. I mean, even had seen a seeming fallout between from Michael Desarian referring to Mark Passio as a tyrant. That was a
Whoa.
broadcast he did. You know, that kind of shook my tree. But you know, Mark Passio describes himself as a petty tyrant, and he says that's the cost of um, when there is. Um, so I don't know how he put it. There was a certain way he said that when there isn't enough people. You know, he has to be like a whip horse, so to speak. I'm trying to put it in my own words, but I don't know if he really said it. You know, that's how I was hearing it, to get people to do the great work because he can't do it all himself. That's
Right.
and so he's trying to gather people in, and so he comes off as a petty tyrant. I believe he referred to himself as. Maybe he didn't
Right.
use the word petty, but a minor tyrant. You know,
He did say
a
petty,
chiefdom.
but yeah.
I think he might have said chiefdom tyrant. Oh, that's a an old world word, chiefdom tyrant. But I think he said petty. Anyway, I'm kind of going on and on. So
You're
you
doing
say
great.
something.
Sure. Well, uh we could talk about some of our shadow work journeys and how we, because like it's one thing to be exposed to, you know, this
Hmm.
material. Um, natural law to me is such a great way of looking at the causal factors for why we're in the state of slavery that we find ourselves in, right? It's like we did this to
Hmm.
ourselves, and like um yeah, like reckoning with that on the micro and macro, you know, that
Hmm.
aspect of like self-sabotage through
Well, I mean,
immoral
the best I can
choices.
understand is like Michael Desarian was saying how the I mean, I need more people to cross examine one another sometimes. I just how I work. I guess maybe I got that a little bit from academia, but I think I don't like the idea of just walking in a direction and then this feeling of like getting lost in the forest and not knowing I mean, like for example, I dodged the flat earth thing when that came along. I got really steep for a while in what's the guy's name? Santos Panaki, because Santos Panaki is a talk about flat earth. He's big time. And he was having a lot of talks with George Maxwell, you know, and I got interested in George Maxwell because Michael Desarian said his one of his great mentors was um, George Maxwell, and so I started coming across Santos Benaki, and I like. Ironically, I was having trouble with Santos Benaki's vegetarianism. He was excuse me, being a vegan. You know, he's really hardcore vegan, and I had the time I was having trouble with that because it's another conversation, but I had troubles with it in terms of um, I can't explain it. I just felt like the food choices were just way too limited. But I used to do it when I was really young, and but I was thinking maybe I'll just end up being vegan. But then I discovered he was flat Earth, and I'd gotten a lot of his items, and I just wasn't keen on the flat Earth at all. And
It's a psyop.
yeah, and so and I came across some problems in the vegan community that is more in line with a new world order type of way of food production, like the
Right.
soybean culture and the idea that meat is unhealthy, and it can be unhealthy, but generally it's not unhealthy. It's more immoral. It's immoral is what it is, but it's not unhealthy. And so a lot of well, I guess it can be unhealthy actually, but generally people like um, what's his name? I can't think of his name. He wrote the book "The Lies Your Doctor Told You." I can't think of his name, but anyway, it's a lot of information to go over.
Ken Berry.
Ken Berry, yes, that's it. Ken Berry, and he brings out a lot of problems in the vegan community, and but I think he must rely a lot on Abrahamic types of views in terms of justifying slaughter of animals. Although I think that there is a different when Atlantis fell and you had the polar shift and you
Right.
had that was a situation where people were really forced to become hunters and gatherers, and I think that's a little different when it's kind of like a fall in civilization where people do crazy things like when there's just absolutely nothing else to eat. But so I think a lot of people rely on that, and so um, but anyway, but Santos Panaki, I stopped listening to him primarily because of the flat Earth. But I know what it was. He was a flat earther, and I was relieved because I thought if I stick around him, I'll become a vegan. And I think that's going to be really hard, and because I really liked a lot of what he had to say, and that's a good thing. Is that just because someone says something doesn't mean everything else they have to say is wrong. Now I'm very interested in becoming a vegan. I'm vegetarian right now.
Yay.
Yeah.
What
So
drove
it's
that choice?
well, cause well, a lot of the way I I knew when I was going to start listening to Mark Passio again that he ties it in with natural law, and I had thought that well, I still had Ken Berry's ideas in my head, but I think he's relying on Abrahamic views in terms of morality. Okay, he doesn't talk
Right.
about that, but I don't go for the Abrahamic view of morality, in terms of the idea that with Kersey Graves, he talks about the 13 crucified saviors, and well, and I don't think that Abraham actually was. I think it's really Ram, the ram of one of the houses of the zodiac. Um, but I guess really what I'm saying is that in terms of uh, requirement of death for um, a generational debt, and anyway, I'm glad I became vegetarian, and I would like to eventually become vegan. I guess the ego is a really it's something to mess with, because it's like it goes with what it's familiar with, and sometimes it gets overwhelmed when there's too many different things it's working on. Because I
Totally.
don't, I don't mind now. I don't even miss eating meat. I think about it
Excellent.
now. Whereas before, I was like, well, I have had problems with. See, okay, this is what really helped me. I didn't realize how seed oils has made being a vegetarian so much more difficult. It's in seed oils and everything. And that really helped me realize that they just don't want you to be they everything they they Deborah Tavera said that the way that the system's set up, they want you to believe. She quotes the former CIA director William Casey, and that the CIA is one of the alphabet agencies, and to me it says a lot that their goal was that everything, or more like objective, was everything we believed would be a lie, and that's that's a lot. Everything. So in other words, if you're a vegan, you're supposed to be it for the wrong reason. You're supposed to, not because it's immoral, but you're going to be in it because it's more healthy, and it can be more healthy being a vegan, but they've made it so that it's hard to get be vegan because there's so many, like you got the soy going on, you got all these seed oils and everything, you've got the wheat contaminated with Roundup. Okay,
That's true.
and so a lot of people are going vegan because it's more healthy. It really can be, but they've kind of made it so that someone like Ken Berry can say, "Well, being vegetarian it's possible, but it's much often your choices, and you're going to be able to dodge the seed oils a lot easier with meat. That's with a meat eating diet. That's the way I understood him. Actually, I didn't even I knowing about seed oils is something more recent. So I feel like I'm kind of full of shit. I just realized.
No, no,
It's like
actually,
I just
no,
learned
dude,
about seed oils about 2 years ago, a year and a half at most ago, a
I
year
learned
and a half
about
ago.
seed oils back in 2016.
Okay,
So, there's some merit in that there's a lot of oils out there that are very highly oxidative and not good to eat,
right.
and yet we eat and cook with them. So like canola oil, there's a reason why it's so cheap. It's not good for your brain. Like,
It's
and so
subsidized by the government too, isn't it? Like corn oil, like corn
soybean
syrup.
oil, yeah, soybean
It's made in
oil.
Canada. That's why it's called can. It has something to do with this. The first three letters is a word slicing that comes. It's something to do with its origins coming from Canada, and it's a big government project to come up with a. I think it's really insidious, kind of like what they did with corn. They subsidized corn, and then they thought, well, hey, we can make sugar real easy out of it, and then the corn sugar from corn, it spikes insulin much more so than regular sugar. And so a lot of companies, they thought, well, we'll just buy this subsidized. We don't care. We just want to go and buy the stuff that's the cheapest for a sweetener. And they went with high fructose corn syrup that comes from corn, but it's unhealthy and it's in everything, you know. And what made it so cheap is it was subsidized by the government, the corn, So it's
Yeah.
just all messed up.
Wheat too. Was I talking to you about the book Wheat Belly?
No,
Maybe
but
that was somebody
that
else.
was a good book. That was put out by, wasn't that put out by the guy that wasn't that, I think Mark Passio met with the guy that wrote that book. What was that
Oh, I
guy?
have no
Mike Adams?
idea.
I think Mike Adams wrote that, did he?
I don't know. Hold on, Mike. Wheat.
Somebody like Mercola, Joseph Mercola.
Mercola. Yeah,
Was that it?
I think so. Hold on. I think
Okay.
Mercola. Oh no, we're both wrong.
Yeah,
William
Mercola. But Joseph.
Davis.
Oh, that was another one. By the way, I followed Joseph Marcola now for 12 years, and he was saying that with vegetarian and vegan diet, it's not. You can do it, but in the long run, it's like for different geographical. I mean, he was based the way I understood him. He said to be a vegetarian vegan, you need very sophisticated air travel and transportation, and you can do that in a very modern day situation to get all your macronutrients. And that kind of turned me off to it because I thought, in other words, you gotta um, you gotta ship everything far places, But when you think about it, when Atlantis fell and the whole world got screwed up and they became hunters and gatherers and living in caves sort of because of the polarity shift, it makes sense because you had less growing time and everything did have to be kind of shipped around. So, but as the civilization rises in vibration, it doesn't require for people, that is. My main concern about the vegan diet is it leads to social Darwinism when you're eating other animals. It took me a while to start seeing that, and I never liked it. I never liked the idea of slaughtering an animal, especially if I'm going to eat it. Could you go slaughter it? And it's like, but I guess if you're starving to death, you're a hunter and gatherer. It's a little bit different when it's like you immediately know that unless you do that, you're going to die yourself. But it's just it's better for our vibration to not if we can, So I'm really excited about I'm like being a vegan now, be vegetarian now, and I like to take it on to being a vegan. So,
Excellent.
but it just shows you though how ego can get in there. It's gnawing on it. I kind of I like bacon. I will say that, but I don't miss it. I'm just staying away from it. I got all these substitutes there, but I don't want to start eating them now because I just thought I'll just stay away from it. In the future, like way in the future, like after 2 or 3 years, I can eat that on a special occasion. But I'm really disappointed when I found out about soy. How a lot of these soy burgers have soy in them. And soy doesn't have to be so bad for you. Oh, that was another thing. I got really disappointed when I learned about soy when I was thinking about being a vegetarian. It's just your options seem so limited. And I think they do this on purpose because they want everything we believe. I hate to sound like a nutter, but they according to Deborah Tavares, I mean, I won't say her so much, but she mentions that she's quoting William Casey, former director of the CIA. Everything we believe they want to be a lie, you know. So that's like a psychopath. It's a death.
Yeah.
We live in a death cult, basically, and okay, I'm just going on and on. You say something. I'm been talking too much.
Um, John just gave me this amazing blunt. Thank you. Oh my God.
I'm sorry.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, so I want to go back to you shared a lot about veganism. Um, I think we can link the subject of how we're in a death cult with veganism in that um, you know, if we're to seriously consider the satanic ritual abuse survivor testimonies, if we are to
Mhm.
seriously consider David Icke's work with archons, there
Mhm.
are extraterrestrials ruling on an archonic
Mhm.
level, right?
Mhm.
And what do they need? They feed on loosh. They need
Yes.
suffering in the
Yes.
human,
Right.
collective. And
Yes.
so,
I'm so glad you said
how
that.
can we increase that loosh if that's
Right.
the mindset? let's
Right.
get slaughterhouses going. Let's have
Yes.
the cortisol and the
Yes.
adrenochrome
Right.
version of
For
uh
sure.
all that in human
Yes.
children, in the animals
Oh
as
my
well,
gosh.
and then the populace eats
Yes.
that death, that eats death after it's
Right.
been cooked. So it's like a death corpse that's been like burnt,
Right.
and then you eat it, like very rare. And then even if it's like a raw meat dish, right?
Hmm.
Just like the blood, like it's just such a there's no care.
Right.
There's no care in eating meat. And whenever I find myself engaging with a carnist on this stuff, I'm like, where's your care?
Right.
And they move off into the left brain, and they have these like left brain arguments. I'm like, y'all need to like tap into like that part of you before you were socialized to think the way you think, and were force fed like burgers growing up, like if I can, why don't we have
Yeah.
field trips for children to go to a slaughterhouse and they can slaughter their own chicken,
Yeah.
huh? You
Isn't that
know?
it? Or you think about like just going to the dentist. Like I can't even stand it without. I can't even stand it when they give me Novocaine. It still seems to hurt, and let alone what an animal goes through. In a slaughterhouse. It's
Dude, I
so.
had did you listen to Brandon Sipes,
What's that?
our classmate? I sent you a link to he did the podcast right before this one.
Brandon Sipes. You sent me a link of him. Okay, I didn't. I'll have to check it out.
He used to work, he's in our class. He used to work
Okay.
at
Oh yeah, I remember you telling about him. Okay.
yeah, his story is
Yes.
amazing.
But anyway, I want to say one thing. I remember my younger years, like around like in my say I'm like, believe it or not, I'm like 61 now. But like I got interested in esoteric. That's the way I describe it. I've always been a little bit, it's a gradual, but I took a deep dive in esoteria in 2011. It just seems like I really got into it, but I like before always like everything kind of overlaps to say, it's you can't avoid esoteria a little bit, because everything's interconnected, But I remember though, like when I was had gotten out of a cult, and I still wanted to be I wanted to be vegetarian because I hate the idea of the cult I was in. It wasn't a cult sociologically; it was a sect. But in terms of its behavior, in terms of pop culture, how we use the word cult, it was a cult. It was a very controlling group. And I mean, I could give you all kinds of examples, but Jordan Maxwell will tell you he was. I got to talk to him for about a half hour. I didn't talk to him so much about Jehovah's Witnesses. I think at the time I didn't even know he was when I was talking to him on the phone. You know, But anyway, but when I got out of that, I just couldn't stand how I just I think it was like a little bit of how we rebel in our own little ways. We think we're rebelling, and then sometimes we really are. In other ways, we're just rebelling in our own unique way. It's just more of a teenager way. And I think I just didn't like the way my cult taught me, and so I wanted to be contraire, and be against the idea of justifying eating a meat based on Abrahamic law, of slaughtering animals for a sacrifice, that kind of thing, and then you give the best. I don't. I can't explain it because I kind of wonder if I really know what I'm talking about. I think, there's the Abraham Isaac thing, and that just seems like, oh wow, that seems such a bigger sacrifice. Let alone slaughtering an animal, that seems nothing compared to that. You know what I mean? That's what I'm saying. That's the way I think in terms of my own. When I was getting out of that cult, I didn't want to. I didn't. It was a hard leaving that.
Um, I remember when we were talking before, you had mentioned that, um, atheism was like a frozen pond for you to
Yeah,
walk across.
yeah, that was
Can you
my way
go?
for a while to get
Yeah.
out of it, you know.
In
And
what way? Like, how do you mean?
well, because whenever I would try to get into spirituality, my programming would go in. So I just froze it, you know, and the only way I could freeze it was going on the left side of the brain. You see what I mean? That's freezing that and operating on different area, all the surrounding areas, the interconnections, you know. And um I mean, it led to problems when I was in school, like in high school. I was really having trouble with school, and praying really helped me focus my attention and study better, you know. Not being, I think what, in hindsight, I think what happened is it was more spacious. It didn't make me over connected with my thoughts as my own, because that's what's insidious about mechanical identification. Like the tool of the head is oneself, which is leads to insanity, basically.
Okay, so
I
in
mean,
full transparency, I have been counseling friends going through the valley of despair, in,
mhm.
in their shadow work process, etc. Um, what are your thoughts on someone wanting to take their own life, and what given your work in social work, right? Like you studied
Well, I
that.
did that for a while, but I had problems maintaining employment in social work. First of all, I was doing case management, which doesn't require a license in social work, which I had. There are a lot of case managers don't have that, and it's a social work is an umbrella profession. It's basically cutting a deal with the state and saying, "Here, we're an umbrella profession." You know, like let's say we're Walmart, and we'll sell you anything, but if you really want to get a more specialist point of view on automotive, I'd go to AutoZone. You know, you know what I'm saying? But so it's an umbrella profession, and you can get extra credentials in any area. That's a kind of it's a very crass metaphor, but I'm thinking at the top of my head. I mean, my stream of consciousness. You know, so
Well,
I mean, I'm
but
sure there's a better metaphor than saying Walmart, because that's so. Well, it's a state. I don't know why I said Walmart, because Walmart's kind of in a way a state store when you think about it. It's so connected with the state. You know, you can get a free vaccine if you go, you go there. Almost. You
yeah.
know, you know
Um,
how ever since World War II, according to people you and I know, probably like the guy who wrote the book. I don't know. Anyway, ever since World War II, they wanted to make things big, a big operation to justify, you know, breaking up, having more regional type parts of the world, and also easier to track people through the IRS. You have big operation. Too many small businesses. You might have to, God forbid, have a flat tax. You know, which is bad enough, but you know, you want to make it so that it's all complicated and um, okay. I think I got myself in a hole. I
oh
don't
no,
know what
no,
else to
it's
say.
okay. Well, let's go back. So I was asking you about like you and I had been talking about, how do we help people out of the valley of despair? How do we help
Mhm.
people when they're feeling suicidal in their shadow work processes? And you came up with some really amazing strategies for if somebody's going through something like that. Would you care to share based on your um, social work background experience as well? But you shared some cool stuff with me that I think people should know about.
Well, actually, the actual technique I didn't learn. I learned that from my mother. I didn't learn it from being in social work. It indirectly I learned it from social work. I was in my profession. I kept getting fired after 2 or 3 years. I'd lose my job, and I'd have terrible depression because I just felt like the the profession was so like not it. I mean, it's okay, a profession, but it just wasn't. I didn't feel like I went into it the idea that I was going to really help people, and I felt like if the business is really well, they'll go privatize it, and then if it doesn't work out well, they'll just let people who really want to help people get burned out, and then if it starts working well, they'll go privatize it. Someone will become a billionaire, and people get hired. And if the billionaire, they don't want too many billionaires in that industry because if they do, the price will come down. So they'll justify a union or something like that. And that whole kind of thinking would get me so depressed. I thought, is that all this is? I mean, this is just so, like, I don't feel that fulfilled in that kind of work. Plus, people coming in, I felt there were some other ways of healing, and we couldn't do that because for insurance, and the supervisor would seem so fearful of. I thought for good reasons, by the way, and I could feel their fear, and I felt that they were mostly supervising me for insurance purposes and nothing to do with real care for the client. A little bit, but nothing. It was like a risk management agency, you know, and
Right.
families often work that way. They always seek homeostasis. And if anything rocks the boat, even if they'll go back to what's semi-dysfunctional, as long as it's not too dysfunctional. Kind of like the FDA. If you got $1 million, they'll approve of it, as long as it doesn't cause someone to drop dead immediately.
So hold on. Let's go back. So like, what do you suggest to somebody going through a dark
Oh
night
yeah.
of the soul?
Well,
Yeah.
okay. So I was having problems with my profession, and I felt like I don't. At the rate I'm going, I don't think I'll have a good work history to keep. I just sensed it in my back of my head, and so my mother brought me this book called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And Eckhart Tolle was talking about, to uh, think of yourself as the observer of your thoughts, not your thoughts yourself. I really like that, you know. But it's a lot of that is all integration because, when you listen to somebody, you don't have to take everything they say. It's like, for a while, I was in love with Oprah because Oprah had interviewed Eckhart Tolle. I just never watched TV that much. Go figure. I was in a cult, then I was in academia. I had no time to study. I had no time to listen to TV when I was in academia. Prior to that, I was in a cult. Then when I was in high school, I was always studying. I had no time for television or anything. Stopped. I just stopped listening to TV because I thought it was just time-consuming waste of time. And then it seemed like Oprah was the only thing that was really worthwhile. Sometimes I'd watch that, and she had Eckhart Tolle on there, and then I really liked her. And then it just shows you how you just got to take what you can from somebody and leave the rest. That's not moral relativism. That's just you just do the best. Like Santos Spinaki, he's a vegan. I think that's really cool. But at the time, when he talked about flat Earth, I thought, oh, that's great because if I stick around that dude, I'll become vegan and he's a flat earther, so I'm out of here. But he was right when it came to being a vegan. Okay, and Oprah was nice that she made Eckhart Tolle available, but she's not perfect. I mean, by any imagine, but I appreciate that. And Mark Passio was saying that Eckhart Tolle's right brain imbalance, but hell, he really helped me deal with some terrible depressions. Okay, you see what I'm saying? So, you know, I guess when we go on our path, we gotta take what we can and leave the. I got that phrase from Sylvia Brown. I really liked her. She always made me laugh. Sylvia Brown.
You also mentioned something about like looking at empty spaces. Could you talk more about that and why it's effective?
Yeah, like with I see. I learned it. It wasn't a technique that Eckhart Tolle told me, but I figured it out by listening to him. Okay, because he would say, look for the spaciousness in anything where there is no words, where there's no thought. listen to the sound and the space between the sound. And I thought, why don't I do that with objects as a game to look at spaces around stuff? Because sometimes when the mind starts racing, it wants like a dog, it just wants to gnaw on something, you know. But the problem
Yeah.
is the thoughts lead to spilt milk, which is what a feeling. Like a feeling is kind of like spilt milk. It's like you can't should feel because once you feel, you're in the throes of it. But the thought produces a feeling. So if you can slow down the thoughts, you'll slow down the spilt milk that keeps coming, which is vicious feelings that keep into circle. And then you get these terrible feelings. Oh, I spilt more milk. I feel so horrible. And then more thoughts come from that. And it's a
Right.
mess. Like more spilt milk, more terrible feelings. So what I would do is I would look for like empty spaces around something, and it helped me um, get off that merry-go-round. Well, merry-go-rounds are kind of pleasant. That's not a good metaphor. I'm talking about a vicious cycle, you
Right.
know?
Totally. You also mentioned, so we talked about not identifying with a thought. We
Right.
talked about living kind of in the present moment. We talked about looking at empty spaces. What
Uh,
other strategies can people use when they're going through tough times?
well, I learned that, incidentally, because my career was tanking. So I kind of learned it from social work, but because I felt that there were some shortcomings in my career and just the nature of the career and how the thoughts I was choosing to think about it was a vicious cycle, and it helped me. Plus, I was very steeped in atheism, so it kind of I was over identified with the left brain, in the
Right.
process that the thought is me. That's the false self.
Right.
So it was really helpful. I really appreciate Oprah having him on. I mean, I listen to her sometimes, and I thought, gosh, she's so cool. But then, everybody's got. I hate to say everybody. It's just, I think they call that psychological integration. When you have to, you integrate it. You see, like, well, I don't care for this, and like Santos, I really like his being vegan, but I don't care for his flat earth.
Right. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
you know.
Um, you mentioned, I remember something about like when we over identify with our false self, and you're
Yeah.
going through depression's a
Right.
liar. So it's interesting
Right.
because it's like I remember when I was studying like whatever intro to psychology in college, like
Mm.
they were talking about how shit, that's the opposite, that when someone's depressed, they're more realistic. What are your thoughts on this? Have you
When
Because
someone's,
I agree with you. I think that depression is a liar. I don't think it is speaking true. Because and so, but there are studies that say the opposite. So what are your thoughts
oh,
on that?
well, the truth, okay, I think that's what they're saying is the truth is very sobering. It's like, that's the facts, okay? And whereas fantasy is ha ha ha, that's what I think that, like, you're like someone is choosing to think whatever they want to think, but the facts are sobering, okay? What we're talking about is where what can you do psychologically, individually, to manage not from going insane, because going insane is not cool. Okay, all right. So when I say there's different degrees of insanity, but if you're in a bad situation, it can lead to if you got to drive and you got lots of responsibilities and you're not there, it can lead to a terrible accident. You got to it can help you focus in the moment. But yeah, the for example, the truth of natural law brings you down to earth, you know? So transformation is in the earth. It's not in some, fantasy. So I think what they're saying is that um, the work at hand is sobering, and so depressed people are more sober than people who are on some trip. Okay, but if you so so people who are depressing and hard to be around, they just might be at the grindstone. Um, but that can get very incestuous it's if they have to drive a school bus and they stay that way and then they have a wreck now because they're not, you know, because they get so depressed, how is that more reality, you know?
Right.
You see, you got to maybe like just a technique of listening to so it stays centered on the road and just, be like a game, when people are driving. I remember when we were kids, we'd play these games like because it was so boring, and so we'd say, "Why don't we count how many restaurants there are along the road?" And we after we count 10, we'll consider pulling alongside the road and taking a break. So it gave you something to hold on to. So I think a nice way of staying focused on the task at hand is to look at empty spaces so your thoughts don't take you away from the task of doing a greater work. But the greater work itself is very sobering. It's I got to drive a school bus right now, or I have to do the great work and give a presentation. So people who are depressing and that they're doing the grindstone work, they're they're more task oriented. So depressed people who, in a certain way, can come off as more into reality than people who are, you know, um, just um, not dealing with the reality, to function, but they can only do that in a padded cell, or on their off day at work, they can't do with the tasks they got to get done in the day, you know, by just not being at the grindstone. So I thought, just the people who are working and doing what they're supposed to, they that's kind of depressing. Everybody needs a break, But so yeah, I think there's truth to that. That people who are seemingly depressing have a better take on things, but if they didn't manage themselves, that wouldn't be true. You know what I mean?
I think so, yeah. Um, the blunt that I just got was is pretty strong, so kind of spacing out a little bit, but um oh yeah, going back to this idea of like depression being real or not, if
Uh
it's a
huh.
liar. Okay, like
Oh
if
yeah, that. Well, what I was telling you is, did you want to say something? I just thought
oh,
of something to say about it, but did you want to say something? I kind of cut you off.
oh, no worries. I was just gonna just say like, if the thoughts are things like, oh, I'm never gonna be good at XYZ, or
Hmm.
um, break up with A leads to, miserable life B, whatever. Like these like random thoughts that come in that are lies. But it's like they are um I'm curious at the research methodology to assess reality in these depression studies that I mentioned, right? Like how do you um
Well, it could be possible that that thought is more realistic. Maybe they haven't studied adequately enough, and all of a sudden, they can't even um, they can't nearly get through the test, some kind of exam they're taking or the crunch time, and they haven't
Yeah.
nearly prepared enough, and it's just like a tsunami hitting them, and so um, the only thing there is to cope and to calm oneself down. But um, the other thing too is um, it really depends on the situation, because
Right.
it depends on what kind of crisis you're dealing with. It could just be some kind of haunting thought that is just trying to cheat one out of not, in other words, a fear of success, and what the consequences when you succeed. You got to move, and now there's other choices, and it changes the homeostasis of the situation. You might now have to make other choices in life that are scary, because now you're gonna no longer have to be doing a certain way of thing, and your mind is creating self-sabotage. It depends on what it is.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean,
Um,
I think, like, for the grace of God, there God on all of that. I remember having a test, I'm like, damn, there's no way I can pass this test. Other times I was taking a test, I'm like, I just need to calm down, I'll get through it. And I sure enough I did. But I didn't get it the kind of grade I was wanting, but I made it through it. And so that fear hit some basis. Well, I started feeling that way at first. I'm like, damn, this is gonna be like, this is a lot. Like, did you really get it? And I'm like, I did. I remember in biology having that class, like in high school, that you would have so much information to memorize. Do you remember biology in high school?
yeah, I was pre-med.
Oh, really?
I didn't go, obviously, but
So you went to college for a while? Oh, you did
I've
in high school? You're pre-med?
I'm highly educated and embarrassed to talk about it because it was a giant waste of time in the left brain intellect.
I can't
And it
get over how
wasn't
expensive it is.
that too, dude. Yeah.
Yeah.
It
That
doesn't
was the
even
only way
matter.
I knew. When I went to, what was this college you're talking about, or stuff you were taking in high school to avoid taking in college? Are you talking about like advanced high school placement in
Yeah.
pre-med? Is that what you're talking
Yeah.
about?
Yeah.
Oh, so you were in a fast, accelerated high school program, like advanced placement, to
Yeah.
knock out courses that you could otherwise be required to take in college for pre-med.
Correct.
Oh, okay. Hmm. I remember when I was in high school and I almost flunked out, and I kept telling them I need to be put in general. I'm like, I'm stupid. I can't make it. The only way I got myself to get decent grades, well, they threatened me that I'd go to a school that was really rough area of town, and I didn't really want to do that. And I wanted to stick with a school that I felt familiar with, and that helped motivate me to. I mean, everybody's operating with what they know. It could gone to this other school. It could have been. That's the way. Reminds me of Jessica Campbell in the hero's journey. It's like that. Whenever you hit a precipice, then there's the threshold of return and all that. But it just so happened that it helped motivate me to want to study, because I didn't want to go to this really rough school. It was a private school I was going to, semi-private, parochial, typical parochial Catholic high school. Okay, and my grades were tanking freshman year. Oh, they were horrible, and I was getting these terrible depressions because I thought, this is hard, and this is what. And people who don't get knowledge easily, they have, like, their jobs are going to be shitty in life. I kind of knew it. And I just thought, I won't have much socioeconomic status in life. It got me really depressed, you know. And so since I was Catholic, I would I would go to they had a chapel there at school. I'd go to chapel every morning, and of course, you know what ends up happening because I'd go there every morning. You know what happens?
What?
Oh, Kevin, have you ever thought about becoming a priest? You know, it's like someone telling you, like, I don't, not as bad, but I thought of an example what they do in high school, but not nearly as bad. Not, no, that's not a good example. I'm not even say it, but you know, they're just saying because I'm going there every morning, and they're saying, "Have you ever thought about being a priest?" And I thought, "Yeah." And so I thought by doing like to study of being a priest got me motivated to really get, and it did. It worked. I got really, really good grade. Well, second honors, never got first honors. School was always really hard for me, but that whole like my sophomore year, I did really, really well, and then my junior year, I went to seminary. Then after being in seminary, it was really, really hard. I wasn't prepared for chemistry. I didn't take algebra two, and so they didn't want me to be in there, you know. So and
I mean, what's the point of this system, right? Like, let's think about this. We have a lot of really intelligent people getting into these left brain specialization boxes, and
right,
you know, and you don't see the bigger picture. You don't think about
right,
things like morality. And so, you know, it's not something to be proud of, to be a person that does well in that system, because it's like if you were really brilliant, you wouldn't have fallen for that trap, right? Like,
right,
you know, like like it's a way to get an intellectual elite, you know, controlled, so that they don't think
right,
about these bigger pictures, and they don't engage their right hemisphere, and they don't, you know, um have, I mean, ultimately at the end of the day, who cares about intellect? Like, oh, I didn't do well on this made up test. Like, are you moral? That's what matters.
I know. You know, I used to think that intellect had something to do. I think this is so ignorant. You know, that intellect had to do with like what kind of person you are. It's so ignorant when I think about it. I that's like it almost sounds juvenile. I mean, I bet I thought that way up until I was uh till I was 32 even. I mean, that is so freaking delayed. That is I mean, for a 32, I mean, that's like half. I'm now 61, but I remember when I was 31, I kind of thought that way. But go figure, when I was 32, I was an atheist, you know? You
I
know,
lo-
I mean, but I was atheist I so slowly evolved out of atheism. It started with something similar to natural law. I kept thinking there's all these laws that don't give a damn about us, and we need to come to know them. And it's just incredible intelligence behind that. And I still saw myself as an atheist, and I just explained to them the atheist that believes in a higher power and intelligent design. And then they'd go like, "Well, then you're not an atheist." And I'd say, "Yeah, I am. I just don't believe it knows us, or if we know it, it could care less. You know, it's up to us to get to know it. You know." And I thought, but most of the atheists were very into the idea over identification with the body, you know. And I thought that leads to a lot of problems. And I slowly got out of it because I started realizing I'm not going to call myself atheist anymore because no one understands what I mean by it. So why even say I'm an atheist? Then I thought, well, there must be helpers out there when you get stuck, kind of like one's parents when, you know, you're trying to figure things out and then they come by occasionally and try to give you a nudge, you know, or other people along the way, and there might. You see what I'm saying? So that's how I got myself out of atheism. It it was more than that, but that was just the beginnings of it, is what I'm trying to say, without going on forever. I mean, talking about a lot of it. I'm trying to look at our time here. It's
Yeah,
I'm just don't
we
want to.
can end soon. Yeah, I just was gonna say
Well,
like,
sorry, wait, you were been so nice. You were like asking me, and I should have been asking you. You were telling we were going to talk about, as you put it, your sex addiction.
yeah,
And what did you want to talk about? It's kind of like now it's, correct me if I'm wrong. We were going to go till 10:30. We only
yeah,
got 20 minutes left. I just feel like that's kind of, I should have earlier asked you about that. Sorry about that. I mean, do you want to talk about it a little? That's a whole, it seems like that could require, it just seems kind of, you don't have that much time if we're going to be ending in 20 minutes.
I mean, I've talked about it before on my podcast, so it's no big
Okay.
deal. I'm
Did you
happy
want
to
to talk a
jump
little
in.
bit about it now, or?
Yeah, sure. But before I do, I wanted to briefly just close the topic on atheism to say that, I actually don't have a problem with atheism if it weren't for the fact that it does not accept objective morality, right? Because it's like there's no um, uh, creative intelligence. And so why would there be natural laws like cause and effect, karma? Why would we even need to be moral, right? Like it's very insidious in its sort of um moral relativistic outlook. That's my main issue with
Well, I think
atheism.
what happens with a lot of times with words is that the prevailing pop culture of the time takes over the meanings of certain words, that you just decide, okay, they've kind of like hijacked it. But at one time, atheist meant, like during the time of the Roman Empire, if you didn't believe in the Roman gods, which were tightly connected with the Roman Empire in terms of the statism of the day. In other words, the Roman Empire felt they couldn't operate as a Roman Empire and make the actual mechanics of running an empire work unless the people believed in the gods. So if you didn't believe in the gods, you were considered an atheist and an outcast. Okay? And so, but if you were a Christian and you believed in one God, you were considered an atheist. Okay? And so, and then also what happened with, um, there were people at a certain time that really believed in it. They believed in a very complex universe that had intelligent design, but the creator doesn't know us. It creates us, but it doesn't know who we are per se. It's very impersonal, and it's up to us to come to know it. And it's just, we're just one of many creations, and there's a tremendous intelligent design, but it's not necessarily. It's egocentric for us to think that it knows us, and 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 then according to Christians, if you didn't believe in, like, a lot, it depends on what Christians you're talking about, but a lot of, I guess it would be Constantinity type Christians, that if you don't believe in their religion, then you don't know the true God, so you're an atheist by proxy.
Right.
But like a pop culture view of atheism is what's going on with transhumanism and hedonism, is that you can do anything you want and you're God, and what do you mean a higher power? The only higher power is somebody more powerful than you that also is an atheist, and they're just more powerful than you, and you better get out of the way. But this is just a very doggy dog world, and anything mysterious can be figured out eventually, and it's all materialism, and the only thing in your way is some other atheist, you know. that really knows where the bananas are, because other people who aren't atheists don't really know because everything is materialism. That's the prevailing atheism of the day. Transhumanism and hedonism. Okay. And but anyway, I still think that the idea that the world is just totally higher intelligence doesn't have anything to do with us. I think that still is awful cold. I think that since there is such higher intelligence, there are higher powers out there that know of us. It's just that don't depend on them, knowing that them constantly coming up and checking on you when you're not following natural law. Okay, they might, occasionally come by and say, "Hey, how's it kicking?" But you sound like you're doing well. That's great. Stick
We're
with
not
that.
doing well.
I'm
Humanity's
just
not
saying.
doing well right now.
I know that, but I'm just saying that I think I guess the metaphor is too much of a distraction. Sorry, but I'm just saying that that I was a philosophy minor in college. I really liked college in certain ways. I put an enormous amount of energy into academia. I got so disappointed when I studied philosophy, and I realized that philosophy is just about it's just an exercise of the mind, and it all depends on like today. Contemporary philosophy is all materialism, and the reason why philosophy isn't that interesting is because there's other materialistic ways of making it bigger than thinking about what one thinks, thinking of thought for the sake of thought, but it used to be a great exercise of the mind. It was kind of like if you can't it was like going to the gym and you could exercise a part of your mind, and um, but the materialism kind of took out the spirit out of it, so it kind of died basically. I think Nietzsche leading to I think Nietzsche started it with the God is dead, and then it led to deconstructionalism, postmodern shit, you know, the crapola of today, you know, solipsism, um, um, the idea that there's no morality, might is right, that kills it. It's kind of like so much weight it falls in on itself. You know, no wonder philosophy is dead. It just kind of got fell in on itself.
I mean, I don't think it's dead so much as just it's distorted for sure in the university
Right.
system, right?
Well, anyhow, so you were saying that you had gotten out of sex addiction.
Yeah. So going back to our discussion on shadow work, right? Like I feel like in my journey, I was physically abused by my parents, and then my
Mm-hmm.
mom also sexually abused me. And my
Mm-hmm.
sister was also obsessed with my sexuality. So I ended up thinking and growing up that I thought I was bi. And then,
Right.
like, I acted out by sleeping with mostly Asian women to
Okay.
sort of like psychologically get back at my sister and my mom. And once I
How
realized
would
what
that
I
be
was,
getting back at them? How would sleeping?
because
Great.
I was psychologically controlled by them and put in a powerless victim sort of role. And so I wanted to play the role of a perpetrator and like, serially, date a bunch of women and like just,
Well, how's that like?
do one night
Oh,
stands and like objectify them and just like, not care about their feelings and just be kind of like slightly, not slightly uncaring. I was uncaring,
well, how did that in your mind? How was that getting back at them? How was that punishing
because
them?
I'm controlling now. I'm controlling the other Asian woman this time. She's the victim. I'm the perpetrator now because I'm
But how
treating
did
her
it?
like
You might be
shit. Because
doing that to them.
I
How
was
does that
being
get?
treated. I'm telling you,
uh,
I was being treated like shit. I didn't like it, and so I became the bully of another.
Right.
That's how
But
um
how is that getting back at your mother and your sister?
because it's against another proxy symbolic archetypal
Oh,
Asian
got
woman.
it, got it. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Because it's like it's projection of the shadow, right?
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
so anyway,
All right. Sorry. I just wanted to see how you where it was coming from. So you didn't like need to like confront them personally, but your internalization of them as a super ego within you, like that's part of what Freud talks about, the super ego. We get it from role models like your mom, your sister, and you're rebelling against your super ego that came from your mom and your sister.
I would say I was rebelling against my id because I
Your id
thought
according to Freud is this instinct.
correct.
Okay,
So I
go
thought
ahead.
my instinct, I thought I was bi. I thought that was something that I was born with.
Gotcha.
I thought that that
Gotcha.
was and like there are occasions where I'll find myself kind of feeling confused when I'm like becoming friends with like a female and
Hmm.
like but once I move past a certain stage where I'm like, "Oh yeah, I like well, let's play this out. Like what would like being with this woman be like?" And I'm like, "Do I actually want that, you know?" So just realizing that like there were these like um in the MK Ultra program, for example, you can have
Hmm.
alters that have completely different sexualities. And what's that
Maybe
based
even
on?
different color eyes. I
Trauma
believe even they
based.
could, when they switch to different personality, their eye color could even change. I heard. I don't
Oh, I
know
didn't
if
know that.
I
But
thought. I think. I believe. I'm not sure. I heard it. Someone on the caliber of what's her name? Uh, I like. Listen, she's got multiple. There's the highfalutin way as DID. But what's her name? Penny Bradley, someone of her caliber or her herself had said, someone in her inner circle that she respects, I think she knows her stuff. She's got such good circumstantial knowledge like you and I talk about. It heuristically, she's believable because she knows everything else we're talking about. So I don't know. I just do the best I can when I listen to somebody. But she was talking to someone in her inner circle was saying that with these multiple personalities, when they change, they can go change their eye color as well.
right. Well, well, not cool because a lot of it is, yeah, based on trauma-based mind control. So like, even
Right.
though I wasn't technically, as far as I know, in an MK Ultra like, specific type program,
Hmm.
I was controlled by trauma, to make a like,
Hmm.
unconscious choice in my sexuality. And I find that like
Right.
it's super common. I having been, active in the lesbian community, a lot of lesbians have experienced rape. So
Hmm.
there may be something to this,
Right. Right.
I can't, obviously, I think there, maybe a certain percentage of people like in the
Hmm.
populace that like genuinely have, certain sexual inclinations, and as long as it's consensual and doesn't involve children and animals, like go right ahead. You're doing it with a consensual with adult, like no harm's being
Right.
done, like have fun. But like I was talking to one of my friends who's transgender, and they were saying like, oh, when their mom was pregnant, on birth control, it was oral birth control, which fluctuates in efficacy with weight gain. um so the mom didn't realize, even though she was still taking the oral birth control, that she was pregnant. And so this baby was like just awash with like, all kinds of like
Hmm.
hormone disrupting chemicals in utero.
Hmm.
And now they're transgender, right? Like, you think there might not be a like correlation with like that, like,
Hmm.
and just like all like the various like, chemtrails, poison the food, franken
Right.
food, like, just all the additives, like all the dyes, like, I mean, so much of our like what we think is something we're born with may not actually be.
Right. Hmm. Well, I think there's something to that because I mean, there's atrazine, which is put in the food. not, I don't know if it's the food, but it's in can linings that causes problems with the testosterone, which men and women need both, you know. So, but I don't think though that a chemical in itself causes sexual orientation. It can cause, yeah, there's a lot of different factors, but I think it's very insidious to do anything to anybody to mess with their sexual orientation. You know, well, that's not cool at all. Not at all.
Yeah, they definitely are pushing the whole transgender thing on the children. And
Absolutely.
like it's partly like obviously like a satanic
Yeah.
ritual en masse, but
Yeah.
also it's part of, you know, the depopulation, right? Like if everyone's kind of like figuring out what gender they are, they're probably not focused on procreating, for example,
Hmm.
right? Like,
Yeah.
um, but you know, the other thought that but whenever we add letters to the LGBTQTIAA
Hmm.
plus alphabet soup, um, you know, they're wanting to add minor attracted persons on that
That's
list,
terrible. That's
you know,
horrible.
and so it's like a slow progression. Well,
Yeah.
we got you to say yes to transgender people. Okay, now we're going to
Right.
get you to say yes to transgendering kids. Now let's have you say yes to minor attracted people. Like that's the
Right.
progression that they
That's horrible.
want, right? And that's why I'm not saying, you know, having, you know, been part of the LGBT community myself for a time.
Hmm.
Like I said, like I've made beautiful connections, and like I think there may be a certain biological component to it. There may be
Hmm.
some socially engineered component to it, but whatever the case may be, you know, people are people as long as harm's not being done. But social engineers are looking at the LGBTQ movement, and they're manipulating it to get to a certain
Hmm.
outcome, you know. So it's
Right.
that's where I have issue with the community. It's not the community necessarily so much as just the way it's being portrayed and used now. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I don't care for collectivism. Period. It just always leads to a mess. You know. I don't. I'm not a part of the. Um, I think the problem they were experiencing is that a lot of people didn't care whether what a person's sexual orientation is. They used to use things like that for blackmail, and that was what Epstein was about. And then they had all these other ways of blackmailing people. So they had to come up with other means, and they're also trying to. Um, it's a lot of, well, it's like it's the whole thing is satanic. You know, they want to um, anything that someone believes is true. They want to make it people to think it's false. It's a death cult. Okay, so I didn't know this a long time ago. So you know, I'm always changing things so slightly. It's a slippery slope. You know. But I don't identify with all these different letters. You know, I think that people either male or female, and I think of gays potentially being a very high expression of God. Um, there was this one man. He was saying, I'm trying to think of what was his last name. His name was Paul. He was saying how gays are a very high expression of God. You know, it's not based on insert of. It's based on like the Gemini, the twin, and there can be some good things about it. But to push it on people as an agenda um, is not good. It's not cool. Um, so
We should probably wrap it up soon because I have
yeah, well, we
to.
can revisit this talk because sorry, we got later into talking about that, and we could talk about it another time if you like. Okay,
Yeah, totally.
about you basically, as you described it. Correct me if I'm wrong. You were saying it's a sex addiction. You know that it sounds like though you never really enjoyed it though that much.
Yeah, I think it was more of an acting out.
And acting out. Right.
Yeah. But that was like, my shadow work journey. And once I realized why I was doing what I was doing, it was like
Right.
part of my awakening and I don't regret it, like, and I learned. So,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, any last thoughts before we end our recording?
Um, the time really went by quickly, but go figure. You're a really good interviewer, and I was doing more of the talking. So I feel
That's
like
really
I should
cool.
have given you more reciprocity. We'll do it again, and next time I'll be more asking you things because I really appreciate you bringing me out. I was amazed how the time went by so quick.
You did
So
great.
well, thank you. Bless your heart for saying that. Um, I can tell your experience interviewing people. I like how you bring people out.
Aw, thanks, Kevin.
You're welcome because it's well deserved that you do. I feel like you've done. I can tell you've done this before, on many occasions. So well, thank you. I'm honored to be a guest here. Let's do this again.
Yeah, sounds good. All
All
right, have a
right.
good night.
You too.
Bye.
Good night. Bye bye.